Hello and welcome to Kingdom in Context. I'm Sean. I want to thank you for joining me today. We're going to have a fun interview with Maria from FREEFLOAT, and I'm excited to have her back on the channel. I just want to thank all the moderators for being here in the live chat, keeping things civil and loving. We really appreciate all of you guys. Y'all are such a blessing here, as well as I want to give a big shout out to all the new members here on YouTube. Membership is something we opened up on the channel just recently. And I just appreciate you guys. The easy way to support us, and it's an easy way to get a fun little name and badge in the live chat if you like to interact. But as always, we want to thank everyone that supports this in all the different ways they have throughout the years, whether it's through all your prayers that you send in through email and through personal written letters. It's through your encouragements, as well as your financial support through Patreon and all the options that are listed below. You guys are a huge blessing and benefit to us, allowing us to continue doing what we're doing, building the biblical resources for people to understand the Bible better that we have. One of them is something we've been working on. It's our contextual study guide that is available for people to download the completed books, currently completed books on Patreon. And then also in the past, we've been able to publish some of those books independently. And we're the first one's Enoch. We're about to publish Revelation now. Enoch is actually on Amazon. So it's actually something that really supports us, because from our supporters' efforts, we were able to get that professionally done and published, and now it's being bought by people all over the world on Amazon, and that also is supplemental to helping us do what we do. So you guys are a huge blessing. Big thank you and a shout out to you. Days of Noah, guys, we're producing an animated series about the life of Noah. Think about that. That's crazy. I don't think anyone's ever done that. Biblically accurate too. None of this Darren Aronofsky 2012 stuff, but how about a biblically accurate story telling about the rebellious angels, the Nephilim, chimeras, hybridized men, the righteous family of Noah, and all the drama that ensues leading up to the flood. And the intent of the series that we're producing, guys, is even after the flood, going up to the days of the Tower of Babel. So we're really excited about this. And here's just a quick little teaser intro. If you're not already aware, if you've not already subscribed to the channel Days of Noah TV on Rumble or YouTube, or visited the Patreon, here's just a little informative packet about them. That is our Days of Noah animated series we're working on, guys. Go check it out. daysofnoah.tv is the website that you can join. That's if you want to actually help make that a reality, you can do that, because it's crowdfunded by supporters like you, people that want to see good Christian content that you can watch with the whole family. This is something that we're actually venturing into and trying to produce. So we're excited about it. Go check it out, daysofnoah.tv. Without further ado, though, I would love to bring on our guest today. This is Maria from FREEFLOAT. Hi, Maria.
Hello. Shalom, everybody. Hi.
Yeah. Welcome back to Kingdom in Context. How are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you for joining me again. You have been busy since last time we talked. You're constantly doing interviews on your channel on Bitchute. I'm continually amazed on how much content you put up. So it seems almost as if you have, 4 or 5 videos a week, it seems like. So you have lots of
Depends
videos
on the
you're
week.
producing.
No, I think you're exaggerating.
Well,
If
I
I
always
find
see new
something,
interviews.
I am, yeah. Um, Summer has been a little bit slow, I think, but if I have questions, I send requests for interviews. Some people are nice enough to say yes. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you've interviewed quite a wide group, an eclectic group of people with different expertise and knowledge levels and backgrounds, and so I'm sure you get to have all kinds of fun conversations. I saw that you recently, I guess you interviewed Gary Wayne talking about Genesis 6 conspiracy.
yeah, that was our second conversation. Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, that's great. So you are you live in Greece currently, is that right?
Correct.
And you lived there your whole life?
Yes, I've lived in London for a few years, but I'm back now.
Okay. So you've never lived in the States or in,
I
um,
visited for 2 weeks, and no, that's it. This
okay.
summer was my first visit to the US.
When did you pick up your English?
School.
So was it
Then
just like a curriculum class you could take in school to learn English?
no, it's an extracurricular class that we do in Greece, like after school, like a school after school, sort of
Okay.
for languages, for foreign languages, and then I studied my degree, my bachelor is from an American college, so my bachelor was in English, and then all my postgraduate degrees were in English, and then I studied in London for a year. Then I came back to Greece, and then I went back to London. I lived there. I worked. I met my husband. I had a child, and then I brought the child and the husband back to Greece.
Okay. That's awesome. Um, so basically, you mentioned multiple postgraduate degrees. Would you like to talk
Yeah.
about some of those?
Yeah. So my bachelor is in psychology, and then I have 3 different postgraduate degrees in different types of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. And then I also have some certifications in New Age stuff like astrology and tarot reading and feng shui and all this stuff that I was studying back then.
So
That's it.
back then, yeah, because it seems like you're
Different life.
taking a different turn in your life
Another
at this
me.
point. Okay, back then, that's right. Yeah, we all have moments where we get influenced by the world, but then we kind of sometimes, Lord willing, people come back to the truth found in Scripture. It seems like you've made that turn in your life in the past recent years. Is that accurate to say?
It's been a year.
It's been a year now.
It's been a year and a few months, I guess, a bit more than a year. It's not long, but it
And that's
was
when all the questions came up.
yeah, probably you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, there's no turning back. No, it's a different chapter. It's a different book. It's not a different chapter. It's a different book.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that's great. So that's interesting. So you're able to psychoanalyze individuals while talking to them. At least that's what you're trained to look for and study. I imagine you had quite the hilarious notes after speaking with me a few times about the Bible, right? Because I know that we talk about some things that most Christians don't talk about. So I can only imagine the notes were pretty hilarious.
So my notes were about my questions, not about your psychological profile. I was more interested in that. In
Writing
your
the word crazy and circling it a whole bunch on the notepad.
no.
No, but is great. I think people really enjoyed the interviews that we did in the past, as far as
That's
having
nice.
a fresh look at a unsuspecting conversation, and that is so rare because that is what we try to foster when I have guests on. Is something that so sometimes the guests that I'll have on, if they're a pastor or if they're a PhD in a specific field of study, they're very set in how they think about the Bible, right? They're not wanting to change it. And I'm the guy that's causing the problem by asking questions about why they think that way about the Bible, especially if the Bible contradicts the way they're thinking or the way they've been taught to think. And so it's just refreshing. I think the audience really enjoyed a conversation where someone like yourself, who's new to the faith, can come with genuine questions and just kind of say, well, why do you believe this? And I try to show in the Bible, and it's not a big argument. It's just, okay, you're going to go think about it. You're going to go test it. And that's what I think all of us should try to be like, is that we should just say, okay, well, why does this person believe that? I'm going to go test it. I'm going to go research the Bible for myself and see. He claims he came to his conclusion this way. I'm going to go test it. So
Exactly.
That is, to me, intellectually honest. But unfortunately, it's not like we think that people are being dishonest. It's just the nature of being pre-programmed with, whatever schooling you've had.
Yes, it's easy with me because I'm not pre-programmed. So I think that's what you mean when you say that people enjoy on conversations, because I didn't have any preconceptions, and I still don't. I think I'm still open. I'm learning. Yeah.
So it's been a year since you've decided that not only is God real in your life, but that you are wanting to know more about him. And I'm guessing that has maybe caused some waves in your family. So has it changed the nature of the relationship with your husband?
I hope not.
Is he happy for you? No, I'm saying many times it gets better for like the family. There's more peace in the home. There's more direction, if you will. And many times both spouses are blessed when one spouse comes to an understanding where they want to pursue God. So,
okay, I don't want to speak about him and his beliefs and his journey. That's his life. But he's been open. He's open. So I'm very blessed to have him in my life. And I don't have a husband who's completely opposed and ridiculous me and me reading the Bible and everything like that. No, he's very open. He's willing. I can't tell you that he's very into it like the way I am, but that's how I am. Once I get interested in a subject, then I just sort of get obsessed with that. I want to know everything I can about that. So, but no, I can tell you that our relationship has improved, and I do believe that our relationship started improving after a few weeks that we started keeping the Sabbath. I think it played a role. I can't explain.
So he's keeping the Sabbath with you.
He is. Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah, he is.
But that's a very positive thing, Maria. You have to understand. We get letters from married couples all the time that the spouse who has not started the journey like the other spouse has, that there's a lot of friction in the beginning. And it sounds like there's less friction with your situation. And especially when it comes to changing your lifestyle, as in trying to keep the Sabbath. So that's encouraging to hear.
Yeah, no, as I said, he's open and he's willing. I don't know whether he finds it as easy as I am, but no, he's willing to follow, at least up to this point. So he doesn't eat pork like me. He doesn't eat seafood like me. We're keeping the Sabbath. We haven't started keeping the feast yet, but we are from next year. I mean, next Passover. It's new for both of us. And now, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, I'm not very open about it. I'm not advertising it. Yet a couple of people know that I'm keeping the Sabbath. I'm choosing the people that I'm gonna, share. I don't want more friction. And I know I'm reading in the scriptures that, Yeshua says, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring divide. And I'm already start feeling it or sensing it. So I'm keeping a low profile, but I'm following my understandings. I won't keep back just for what other people is gonna say about my lifestyle, if that made sense.
That I think I understand. I do
Yeah.
want to encourage you though, because if you're already practicing the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath, you are keeping the feast of God. That is actually the first feast
I
in
know.
Leviticus
Yeah.
23. So I just
Mhm.
want to encourage you. It's a good step in the right direction, right? Because in the United States, we have so many different churches here that teach against it because they've been taught badly. They've been taught poorly. Obviously, you know that we address that on our channel, and I asked
Yeah.
pastors about that when they come on the channel. And so I want to encourage you that, my testimony is pertaining to the Sabbath. My testimony is that my life was changed radically and was blessed greatly once I started practicing to make a serious effort to keep the Sabbath. So, and what's so funny is even the way I just worded it right there is making an effort to keep the Sabbath, because keeping the Sabbath is doing less effort, because you take a day off, from work, and you just rest, or you devote yourself to good work in some way, some form
Mhm.
of charity to help someone, or it's not supposed to be a burden. So I'm excited to hear that. That seems really encouraging, and I just continue to pray for you and your husband that the Father continues to lead you guys and mold you into a further life of strength and peace in your family. And because I think it's when you start keeping the Sabbath is a sign of the covenant, as Exodus 31 talks about. So when you start trying to keep something like that in your life, the Father, there's something unique about it. He does. I hesitant to use the word reward, but that's what it kind of feels like. It feels like he's like, oh, you want to actually change some of your lifestyle as a sign that you're in a relationship with me. I'm going to bless you. It's like
There's a
he wants.
power.
Yeah.
There's a power in keeping the Sabbath. As I said earlier, I can't explain it, but it's evident. It was evident after a few weeks. It was evident. It was evident in me, and it was evident in my family situation. It was evident.
Well, that's encouraging. That's awesome. So, have you always been interested in psychology growing up? Was that the field you gravitated towards?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. And did you ever see yourself as you were pursuing your degrees? Did you ever see yourself interviewing such wild characters?
No, no. But with me, I never set goals, really, especially professionally. I was more of the thinking that life will show me, however I feel, and wherever life takes me, I will go. Professionally speaking, I mean. So I've done different professions, even irrelevant to my degrees. And I never really, I didn't choose to go into psychology because I was imagining myself sitting behind a desk and analyzing people. No, I didn't have that vision or goal into my head. But I was always interested in what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on behind, inside of us, what's going on. You tell me something, but what's going on behind your, in your head when you're talking. So it was more my inquiring nature, I think, that led me to psychology.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
And
awesome.
new age also,
And
learn
the new
yourself,
age.
fulfill your potential, reach your actualization and all that nice stuff.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me that the new age philosophy is so encompassing of of different religions and theologies, essentially. Excuse me. It's like they're very ecumenical, right? They're very welcoming
Mhm.
to all other theologies.
except
Um,
except Christianity.
I was about to say, yeah, you got it.
Yes.
Except actually Christianity, and that's
Yeah.
very interesting, right? And
Yeah.
um, because if you go and speak with someone who's practicing Hinduism, they don't have, at least unless the majority of them. I know there's some extreme sects, but there's the majority of them. They don't have like hatred feelings towards other types of religions, right? If they met an actual Celtic pagan, like they would not, they would probably have a conversation about, oh, why do you believe what you believe, and it would be very peaceful. But there's this unique thing in the spiritual world where when the idea of Christ gets involved, suddenly that all the other unclean spirits that encourage false religions, they get their feathers ruffled. Their spiritual feathers, if I could put it like that, their demonic feathers get ruffled because they don't want people understanding about the goodness of God. So they desire to shut down that dialogue, and there's no more this loving, free exchange of information and sharing in the collective of New Age faith and all the different theologies that are underneath that umbrella. Like you said, it becomes a very obvious dividing line that, oh wait, Christians are bad, but we're gonna accept everybody else except Christians. It's very unique perspective. What was your mindset like before last year, before a year ago, when you made a change and you were still? Did you view Christianity in a bad light? Did you view people of the faith as antagonistic to you?
No, I was never antagonistic about anybody. And I didn't really have any conversations with Christians. All the people surrounding me were basically New Agers.
Okay.
So, yeah. I was, before I realized that there is a creator, I would say that my conversion, let's say, in quotation marks, was in two stages. The first stage was that I realized that there is a creator. And I realized that when I convinced myself that the earth is flat, which is what happens. If you believe the earth is flat, somebody created that. But I was still a New Ager. I mean, I would still call that creator an energy or a source or whatever. And what led me to start reading the Bible was basically the COVID situation and everything that happened, because then I started researching financial issues and political issues and what's going on in the world, and that research led me to start reading the Bible, because I was convinced after a year and a half of researching that there is evil. Evil is true, because I didn't believe that evil was true. I believe that good and bad is, evil, and God and evil are the same, like a coin with two two sides. Yeah. But what's happening the last few years, it's so evident. No, it's not one coin with two sides. It's like a brutal battle, and it wasn't about people, just the greediness of people. I would say that 10 years ago, I would say that all the bad things in the world are happening because people are greedy. People want more money. People want more power. I don't believe that anymore. I mean, it wasn't a sufficient excuse for what's going on the last few years. So I saw evil. I was convinced that that's evil. And if there's evil, then there's a God. In my head, that's how I thought.
No, I understand. Right, because by very definition, something is evil because it's being contrasted against something else.
I just couldn't believe that people, like humans on their own, like human nature on its own, unaffected and untouched by anything spiritual, just pure human nature, is capable of such destructiveness, self-destructiveness, because, they're destroying the earth, they're destroying nature, they're destroying they're killing us. I mean, it's a self-destructive practice that's going on out there.
Yes.
And I think that I thought, no, that's not normal. Something else is happening. And that was the turning point.
Yeah, it didn't make sense, right? Just the fact that people could be wanting to destroy their environment, themselves, their families, their communities, without being deceived by some ulterior motive or force that seemingly is unseen. So here comes this unique concept of spiritual warfare that the Bible describes, where it does say there are malevolent entities that want to destroy mankind, that attack mankind, and seek to undermine the faith of people and seek to destroy families. And it's very interesting because you get into the ancient stories, specifically ones that are introduced like in the book of Enoch. And then that's where you get the origin stories of where these unclean spirits came from that attack and oppress and try to destroy mankind. And unfortunately, huge parts of Christianity has tried to remove that information, even though there's no logic to it, because in those churches where they've tried to remove those books, which gives the information, they still talk about the Gospels with Christ dealing with unclean spirits that were destroying families and people, and freeing those families and those people from those unclean spirits. So the average Christian today would sit in a church and hear those stories being read and think to themselves, well, where did these unclean spirits come from? But so many churches have removed the books that explain where they come from and why we're in this spiritual battle that Ephesians chapter 6 talks about. And so it's heartbreaking. In Greece, you grew up in Greece, and you told me in our previous interview, you said that you actually have a Greek Septuagint that you can read.
Yeah.
Does your Greek Septuagint have the book of Enoch in it?
No.
No. So you have a more modern version? Is it, so it's not based off the, it would be called the Greek Orthodox canon. Is that right?
Yes.
That you have? How many books does yours currently have in it?
Oof, I have to count. Where's my Bible? I'll tell you.
Well, I guess you can just give me a roundabout number.
I don't know. I think we have about 5 or 6 more books in the Old Testament, like
Okay.
Tobit and the Wisdom of Solomon. Do you have the Wisdom of Solomon?
Well, the Bible's printed and distributed in America used to have the Wisdom of Solomon, but it no longer does.
Yeah, we have the Maccabees.
Mhm.
I don't know what else.
Yeah, it's funny. Even in the book of Tobit, there's a lot of demonic activity that has to be dealt with and addressed. And
there is a lot of demonic activity all over, Old Testament and New Testament, from the beginning.
there is.
From
There
chapter 1,
is.
Genesis chapter from Genesis 1.
Well, for example, like in the book of Maccabees, though, is what I mean. You have Antiochus Epiphanes. You have the Greeks that come in and during 2nd century BC era, they try to invade Judea, and there's the Maccabee have to stand up for the people, and there's conflict. But the Seleucids had come in and tried to actually attack the Israelites on certain times to overcome them and stop them from worshiping Jehovah, and then try to get them to worship different gods. That's motivated by unclean spirits, but the narrative in the text doesn't actually say this demon forced the Seleucid king to do this. But we see the fruit is evident from people's behavior, and the fruit of wickedness and unrighteousness that the Bible in other books that other Christian communities have had explain the origin of where that fruit of unrighteousness came from these rebellious watchers who had offspring, and then those offspring are still on the earth as disembodied unclean spirits, trying to produce that wicked fruit in mankind. And sometimes they produce that in wicked kings, this fruit of unrighteousness that causes them to do oppression, destruction, to deceive and all kinds of things like that. So I agree with you 100%. Spiritual warfare is all over the Bible, but very, very few books actually outright name, okay, this demon's doing this, or Satan's coming in to do this, right? Does that make any sense?
Okay, I understand that, like the book of Enoch, you don't get the story so clear and evident anywhere else other than the book of Enoch. But even without the book of Enoch, if you really don't have any preconceptions in your mind, you can see here and there clear. You get a clear understanding that a spirit did that, or even the devil himself, Satan, did that. For example, in Kings, is it? I don't remember where it says that Satan made which king to count to
King David.
to register.
This is amazing that you brought this example up, Maria, because that's That's in the Septuagint. So the reason that you have that information, a lot of other Christians in the West, they're confused. That story confuses them because it just says, that David decided to take a census in the Masoretic translation that we have, but in the Greek Septuagint it says Satan rose up and incited David to take the census.
I'll tell you what's going on. This is mentioned twice in the Old Testament. I don't remember where is the first report and where is the second one, but this event is recorded twice. The first time it says that God asks David to take the registry. The second time that it mentioned in a different book, it says Satan does that. So I don't know. The Masoretic has changed both recordings.
Yeah, it's confusing. Yeah, it confuses people. So this is why we're always encouraging people to like cross-reference the Septuagint if they find a confusing passage, because it may give them some extra information. And yes, and as always, even other books cross-reference other books that may share the same story. So it's interesting that your perspective, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at, is coming slightly different to this idea of as you stepped into the faith and you're trying to learn more about the faith and do more research on why certain hot topics are commonly talked about in Christian communities, why some of them are just outright ignored. And I think you asked me some of those questions in previous interviews, specifically when it comes to how, atonement questions that you asked me and how atonement's made for us when we confess our sins.
Yes.
And you've started to realize that question that some churches, or the majority of churches, that just gravitate towards certain topics, and they're basing the repeated preaching on those certain topics off of their background, and that means whichever Bible they have in their community, their Christian community around the world. And then there's all these other interesting topics that these churches just want to ignore, like the Nephilim, like the origins of unclean spirits, like what Christ is actually doing in heaven, like is heaven a real place, as opposed to thinking, oh, well, heaven is just within you, the kingdom of God is just within you. That we hear that reinterpretation a lot.
Yeah.
And it confuses good-hearted believers that want to read the Bible for what it says, and the Bible comes along and says unclean spirits are real. They're trying to deceive you in your life. They want to steal you away from following the path of your salvation toward faith in Christ. And then the fulfillment of your faith in Christ is that he resurrects you in a very literal way and brings you into a literal kingdom that comes down to the earth. And that has everything to do with what you talked about previously. You said you convinced yourself of that the earth was flat. Would you like to share a little bit about that process and that how you came to that conclusion?
By watching a lot of videos on YouTube. And the way my head works, I'm very scientific, let's say. I'm very methodical in the way I'm thinking. I'm very critical. I'm very analytical. I need to piece things together. Everything needs to be linear and make sense. That's how I am. So when I'm saying I was watching videos on YouTube about flat Earth, they were mostly scientific videos. So, and I was, when I delve into a topic, I always try to go first into debates, because I wanna try to attack what I believe, and see whether it holds. So I was watching a lot of debates. And I did a lot of scientific research, like into astronomy again, and physics, and so it didn't take long. It didn't take long. It didn't take long for me. It was so evident. If you take the scientific approach and not the conspiracy approach for the flat Earth, well, couple of months, maybe even less. I was convinced. Without a doubt, in my head, the Earth is flat. As flat as it goes. Yeah.
That's interesting. So, when do you think you came to the information that not only is the land we live on not a ball, but instead it's a it's a a flat topography with mountains and ravines and valleys and canyons and stuff. And but when did you come to the idea that the biblical model that describes an enclosed earth, when did you come to that idea?
The enclosed earth, I understood it from the beginning, even before I started reading the Bible. It has to be enclosed because of the pressurized air. And I was convinced that there is no space, again, from my research.
Yeah.
Now, the biblical model, no. I was trying to find out after I started reading the Bible, when I realized that there is a God, and which God? The God of the Bible, that God. After that realization, I started questioning exactly how this earth is and how it works, and basically, I'm changing my philosophy, Sean.
Okay.
I'm rethinking the whole philosophy about life, death, everything. It's a whole new philosophy. It's a different way to stand in, to stand and view things and behave and react. Everything is shifting. It's a journey. It's a process.
Yeah, there's a gentleman over in the United States that wrote a really popular song about 30 years ago called "The Great Adventure," and that's what you're describing. That's what comes to mind to me. You're on the great adventure right now. This is where you change your mind about life and the reality that you're experiencing, because you've inserted into the equation the Father's words, which are, hey, he created you with purpose and intentionality. He created you in a specific environment with boundaries, and he created you to enjoy this life and this existence. But at the same time, mankind is appointed death. And so this is what the book of Hebrews chapter 2 talks about. All of mankind is enslaved to the fear of death. And this causes man to evaluate life differently than like an angel who's not promised death, who's given an immortal body from the start. And I can't even put my mind inside of that paradigm because that would change everything. And I'm a man, and so I'm inside the mindset of mortal man, knowing that our time is short, knowing that there is the promise of eternal life after this, if I put my faith in the Son of God and the atonement that he makes for me. And that, to me, that's a wonderful promise. But at the same time, I still work through the emotions and the mindset of someone knowing that death awaits me. And I can understand why the writer of Hebrews would call it enslaved to the fear of death. I don't fear death anymore, but it never leaves your mind. You always definitely, I would say most rational, sane people always think about it, not just in a basic sense of self-preservation, but especially when it comes to faith. Because the whole promise of the faith that we're in is that Christ is going, at your death, Christ will resurrect you. And that some people, they don't like that idea. It's really amazing.
It's the attachment to this world that
Yeah.
creates all these nasty feelings, or not nasty, but unsettling emotions.
Well, if you don't know the world that is unseen, that as the prophet Baruch calls it, or as the writer of Hebrews says, the heavenly country that's destined to descend through the enclosure down to the earth as the New Jerusalem. If you're not aware of that story, then all you have is a sense of Gnostic belief, which is this is all there is, and then you're going to go into the unknown where some sort of divinity is after you die. And this is essentially what heliocentrism teaches, right? The current solar system model, which they do not attribute the origin of that to a creator. They attribute it to a big bang that happened out of nothing. They do not know the end result in their model of creation, of where everything's going as it is still expanding in ridiculous speeds. They theorize in that model that, oh, well, everything's just going to end up going back to a point of density again in some sort of implosion, right? All the stars will supernova heat death, and then everything will go back into a point of density. And none of that is exciting to think about for mankind, right? For us, for the reality of the life that we're living. If you're being told that as an 8-year-old child in school, and you're not being told the Creator's words for, oh, you were made with intention, you were created by he knit you together in your mother's womb. He put you in this unique, wonderfully enclosed environment that everything was in here was catered to you. The sun, moon, and stars are put inside the firmament itself. They have their own layers of the firmament that shine down on you. And all the angels of heaven were made to serve mankind, to benefit those who are inheriting salvation. Like that is an amazing story. Now, some people would call it a very egocentric story, right?
Egocentric?
Yeah, they would call it a very like selfish story, right? Because mankind is the point, is the, even though we were made last, everything that was made before us serves us. So people would say that it's a very, like, people that are antagonistic of the Bible would say it's a selfish story.
Oh, come on, really? Who are they to
you've
talk
never heard that?
about egocentrism? No, because ultimately everything serves the Father.
Well, we're supposed to. You're right.
The Father is the center, not man.
That's
mankind.
right.
For the rest of the religions, mankind is the center.
That is the hypocrisy. You're right. Yeah, you're right. It's just interesting the things I've heard when going through this paradigm that you said. You realize through your scientific study that the current narrative we were told, it's not right. It doesn't line up. You can't prove any of it. It's all just theory, conjecture, and hypothesis. But then you go into here and you actually look at some raw science. We can see too far. Pressurization needs a container, and the list goes on and on and on. And you start to realize, okay, is there a model that fits what we can actually test? Lo and behold, it's the one that the Bible describes. So with the rest of the story in the Bible, is the Creator telling you he made you on purpose and he wants to give you an eternal future and let you live in his house with him. And he's going to bring his house from heaven above down to the earth at the end of the story, and there'll be peace forever throughout the entirety of creation. And so that is a story, as you came into the faith, that's a story that we try to remind people the Bible has been teaching this whole time. That's why we named our show Kingdom in Context. And when you came into the faith, how long was it before you heard that part of the story?
About the promised kingdom, you mean?
About the reality of God bringing his house through the enclosure down to the earth to create peace on the earth.
I would say pretty soon. I found you pretty soon on my
okay, well, that's
journey.
good then. Then I gave you an incredible shortcut to weed through a lot of the nonsense.
Yes. No, I think your channel was one of the first channels that I actually started following instead of just I can't find the word right now that I want to use. Like when you have a remote control and you're
You're channel surfing.
Yeah, I was channel surfing, and I think your channel was one of the first channels that I actually subscribed and followed regularly. I consumed a lot of your content in the beginning. You gave me a broad understanding from the beginning, and it made sense. Most of the things made sense, and when something makes sense, you just stay with that. You try to find out whether it's true or not, but you stay with that because it makes sense. You don't say that's what's else, what else is there, because this doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it wasn't difficult for me. No, I would say from the beginning, I knew about the promise that the kingdom coming down. I mean,
well, that's great. It only took me 17 years after being a Christian to realize the fullness of that story and how important it was to understand. And I wish in my first year of faith, someone would explain it to me. It would have answered so many questions. But I don't think I was mature enough in my brain, because you're coming to this as a mature woman, and you have a life of experiences that you've already at 17. And I don't think I was mature enough to understand or go down the process of realizing I was lied to about where I live, about the shape of the earth, because that matters to the story of understanding the kingdom coming down above you.
Yes, it matters.
Yeah. We actually tried to do, I did a show several years ago. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I tried to go through the research that some of the Pew Research that has been taken over the last 5 to 7 years in the United States, as far as Christian families whose children leave the faith when they get into university, and
Yes.
all the reasons why they did it. And a lot of the reasons had directly to do with cosmology, with where they were told they live, because none of it makes sense with Genesis and the creation story. So there's direct conflict there. And then, of course, the children, being very impressionable at that age, they adopt the heliocentric model because that's what's forced on them. They have to know it and answer it to pass their classes and to be accepted in culture, honestly, because as you know, when you start talking about maybe you lived in an enclosed environment and the land isn't a ball, but maybe it's actually a flat topography, people look at you differently.
Differently. You're very kind.
Yeah.
They think you're a lunatic. Son, I think, because as I told you, I'm very scientific. I love science. I understand it. I consume it a lot. I think the whole purpose of science, the way they're using it, is to take you away from the Father. Not just the cosmology, everything. All types of science. They have corrupted everything. The biology that they're teaching is completely false. It's a lie. There's no DNA. There's no DNA. I mean, there is DNA. The helix is a lie. It's not there. It's a theory.
Can't be
A
seen on
serpent.
microscopes.
It's a serpentine. No, there's no picture of a double helix. There's no double helix. These are two serpents.
Right.
No DNA there. So from
Kind of like the caduceus, right?
exactly, yes.
Yeah. And who owned the caduceus in the past?
Hermes.
That's right. And what was Hermes famous for?
Trickery.
That's
and
right.
lying.
But he was also extremely intelligent, right?
Yes, very intelligent.
That helped in his deceptions.
Yes. And then you learn that chemistry is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Chemistry is wrong. There are no atoms and electrons and spinning. That's also a model. Nobody has ever seen it.
That's right.
And physics, like Newton, and he was call it when the people who were trying to change gold into
Alchemy.
Yeah, he was an alchemist, and the basis of modern science is alchemy. You learn that. Mm-hmm. Very occult. So physics with Newton and then Einstein and quantum physics, completely imaginary. Mm-hmm. But I believed in those things. I based my life on those things. I no longer have these books, but I had books and books and books, like dozens and dozens and dozens of books with all these nice theories. And why did I say all these things now? I don't remember.
Well, we were just talking about the stark difference in reality and understanding reality.
Yes,
versus
about
what
science.
The Bible says, right?
Yeah. So the educational system is designed to send you far, far away from the Father. The whole educational system, not just cosmology. That's why I said all these things. I remember.
That's right. Yeah, and even in the cosmological model that mainstream science teaches, this heliocentrism, they cannot mathematically nor observably, they cannot explain it. So they have this unknown, unseen force that they inject into the equation called dark matter.
And dark energy, yeah.
How interesting is that, right?
Yes, because their model is correct. You won't change the model. No, the model is correct.
That's right.
We'll invent things to keep the model. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
You cannot prove that it exists, but it must exist in order, because we can't change the model. That's their mindset, because all their money and their funding is going toward promoting that model. And they don't want to change that, because that model, in my opinion, and you can tell me what you think about this, it leads to the one of the greater deceptions that are coming and that they're already introducing to the world, which is something that originally they called panspermia, which is this idea that the ancient life was seated on Earth from someone that was like us, but then left the Earth, and then they're going to come back And so they're
Our
basically
gods. Yes.
like the aliens are like ancient forefathers that are progenitors of mankind that are going to come back, and they're highly intelligent, and so that's why I think that in order for that story to be sold to people, you have to have a heliocentric model.
Yes.
And that story, by the way, is still just rehashed from ancient Mesopotamian creation tales of the ideas of the Anunnaki and the powerful gods who then can seed life on the earth and genetically manipulated man from monkeys on the earth to make them workers to mine gold for them, and that they ruled them from the heavens and went and traversed the celestial spheres. And so that it's just a imagining of an ancient deception that was told to mankind. And I think that they're prepping with the heliocentric model. In my opinion, they're prepping the world for that lie to be told
for
again.
the return.
Yeah. So no, I don't think that any aliens that are introduced in the future, I don't think they're going to be little gray men, with big black eyes. And I don't think they're going to be, flying spaghetti monster. That is hard for us to relate to. I think it's going to be a very
What about green with 3 eyes?
No, I think it's going to just be looking very much human-like, right? Very relatable. And they're going to say that there are ancient forefathers, like the original humans that have finally come back after their journeys through the stars. And so I think that's going to be part of the deception, personally. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. And I think that's the main reason why they're keeping the heliocentric model, because of the UFO return. But also it's a domino effect, because remember that we're being taught that as above, so below. And the atom is structured exactly like the heliocentric model. So it's the nucleus and the electrons revolving around like the planets around the sun. This is what they teach. If one part of that domino falls, then the whole edifice collapses. It's it's a chain.
It's interesting, isn't it? And it's all based on a philosophy, like you said.
Yes.
It's a way to view something that you can't actually quantify. You can't actually see it, but it's a belief in how you should view it, which assumes certain things that are there, even though you can't see those things. And there's presuppositions in that philosophy, and it's very deceptive. And to me, this is why I think that Colossians 2:8 is so powerful. It talks about being deceived by vain philosophies, because they're promoted by the spiritual forces of this world. And when you look into the definition of the spiritual forces of this world in that passage, it, to my understanding, is a Greek word that references unclean spirits.
What's the word?
I don't remember the word off the top of my head, but it's in
Colossians
2:8. Yeah. Go to Colossians 2, verse 8 and 9. I think it's just in verse 8.
2:9.
2:8.
2:8. Τα στοιχεία του κόσμου. The elements of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐿? Am I saying that right?
Στοιχεία.
𝐦𝐤𝐤?
Stοιχεία, yes, with an he. Stοιχεία. Stοιχεία is the elements. That would be the English word now that comes to mind to translate it. But stοιχεία in Greek is also the elements of the world. Hence you call spirits elementals, because they come from the stοιχεία, from the elements of nature, like water and earth and air. And so
the ancient cosmic
I think
spirits.
it's also, exactly, it's also a reference to the elements of, the elementals, maybe.
Yeah, there's I don't know if I'm saying this right. 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐿? Is that a variant of the word?
No. What do you want to say?
𝐦𝐤𝐤. I'm just trying to look at the different applications of from the study guides that are produced on this word for English readers. I'm trying to pronounce the way that it's spoken. But either way, but it defines it as ancient astral beings associated with the elements of the earth.
Yes. Yes, it's the same word, only you, the intonation is different. So the elements is stοιχia and the elementals is stichia. The same
Oh,
word, different intonation.
stechia.
Stichia. And if you want, in Greek, if you want to say that, you're being haunted by a spirit, we will use that word, stοιχio. Στοιχιώθηκα, με στοίχιωσε. It's that word, yeah, for the.
So direct connection to the cosmic spirits of the world and a cosmic model of creation.
Yeah.
Both intended to deceive you away from what the scriptures have said this whole time. So that you do not, as a believer, you would not understand the promises in the scriptures that the Father is working inside of a completely different model of creation. You were made and exist inside of a different model of creation. And the end of the story is that he's going to bring his house down through that creation to dwell with mankind on the earth. When you grew up in Greece, did they teach you about, did they go into great depth in school about the Greek gods of the past?
Yes. Mythology is big here.
Yeah, I would imagine, right? They don't view it as fake though, right? They view it as true history. Is that correct?
I think you've asked me before this question. Yes and no. In school, they teach it as mythology, but everybody knows its history. If you
Okay.
understand what I mean, they can't tell you at school. This is history. Giants existed, and Zeus was having babies here and there, everywhere. They can't explain that, but sort of it's an unspoken understanding that Hercules existed, that all the heroes in our mythology were actual people, and yes,
Mount Olympus was an actual place.
Mount Olympus is an actual mountain. I mean, it's
Well, I know
here.
I know that they have it as an actual mountain, but talking about the one that the ancient Greek writers talked about that ruled in the sky.
You know what? I think, if I remember correctly, they didn't teach us that they live on the mountain. I think they were living on the clouds above that mountain. That was the area that there. It was the heavens that they lived. Yeah.
So in that sense of mythology, or in that story of the gods, with Zeus being seemingly the head patron god, did they ever express that Zeus would bring his house in the clouds down to the earth and live peacefully among mankind?
No, because there's no end. There's no end in the Greek mythology. This story just stops.
Right.
And nothing.
Well, I would suggest that the story stopped because Christ showed up.
Yes.
Because he changed the game when he showed up.
There was no purpose. That's what I'm saying. They created us, but with no purpose. Greek mythology doesn't have a purpose, a goal, an end point, an end. Nothing. It doesn't. They just created us. They were having fun. We were all having fun, and then nothing.
Yeah, it's a very very temporal theology, right? And that's where I think that the scriptures are so unique compared to any other theology around the world, because it's the only one where the creator of all things, who lives above all the rulers, all the archons, he's the one that actually wants to come and live with mankind on the earth at the end of the story. And that is the completion of the story, that all of creation, both the heavens above and the earth, all live in peace. And there's no more sin. There's no more destruction. There's no more deception. There's no more rebellious angels trying to take wives and have unclean spirit babies. There's none of this stuff. It's just everything goes to the way he originally created it to live, and there's peace and everything is good. And to me, that is a story that the enemy wants to cover up as much as possible. because that story gives you a clear sense of purpose, clear
Yes.
sense of direction for your faith. And unfortunately, the Christian experience in modern days in so many churches is that they're not told the end of that story. And so it just greatly encourages me that you found our channel early and got to hear, the end of the story explained in a way that you seemingly understood it.
Yeah.
Because some people, the parable in Matthew 13, it's just some people don't understand it.
What's the parable? Which
It's
parable
the
is
parable
that?
of the sower, Matthew 13.
Ah, yes, yes.
Yeah, this is the four categories.
Yes.
Three of the four categories, they understand it, but only one of the categories makes great things out of it. So it's, the first seed, it doesn't take root. They didn't understand it. The second one, they did understand it, but then they get pressured by life, and then they're the second and third category, they're similar, they're the worries of life, the pressures, the family, different things, jobs, pressures from society, and they don't make use of the story. Like it doesn't blossom. The word of the kingdom is the story I'm referencing. That's the language in Matthew 13 is the seed is comparable to the word of the kingdom. But then it's the fourth category is those who hear the word of the kingdom, they understand it, and they produce fruit in their life 30, 60, 100-fold. And that is what we pray, that everyone becomes a part of that last category. It benefits your life greatly. And I just want to encourage you, it looks as if, from what you're telling me, and since you're still willing to talk with me after our previous conversations, where you heard a lot of crazy stuff that you may not have heard before, it looks as if you're falling into that fourth category. Because I didn't know that you were already trying to adopt the Sabbaths. That's amazing.
Yeah, I started keeping the Sabbath in July.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I want to say something that I just realized because we were saying that the Greek mythology, the Greek ancient religion doesn't give you a purpose and a goal, an ending. I thought that maybe that's why philosophy blossomed in ancient Greece that much, because religion didn't give any purpose to the human, to mankind, nothing. And then philosophy needed to just fill this gap. And philosophy, of course, was all about how you're going to find purpose in you,
understanding
in
God
society,
and life.
in this world, how this world works. It was all, of course, very, very basic, had nothing to do with God or godliness, because the gods were out there. You can reach them. They're separate. So you're here, stuck here. So I think that makes sense.
Well, some of the dominant forms of philosophy that I've researched was, well, when you go, it depends on which time period you're talking about. But if you go deep into history, before Neoplatonism, back to actual Platonism, right, from Plato, and then you go deeper, you go back to Egyptian negation theology. And that's where they had, and you see that same mindset of negative theology carried forward into other schools of thought later, which is this idea that you can't really explain God, but you can try, but to actually define him becomes disrespectful at some point. And that's opposite of what the scriptures teach, by the way. But this is something that, yeah, I agree with you. If they don't have purpose because the gods created them for fun, and they encourage them to go take part in the rituals at the temples to Zeus and Diana and all these other places where there's a bunch of lasciviousness happening, which makes you feel empty on the inside, and it doesn't give you fulfillment. But instead, yes, you would try to figure out, well, who is this God that we worship? Why do we go to these temples and participate in these rituals? Why do I not feel fulfilled? So then you would start to realize, or start to try to make sense of it by trying to explain it in with some way that would give it purpose. Even though this is my understanding, the reason that negation theology would have become the most dominant form weaved through most of the schools of thought is because the actual pantheon god, Zeus, he doesn't want you understanding who he is.
No.
Because if you understood who he was, you would realize the Bible the Bible already explains who he is, and he's the one that is, deceiving mankind, the dragon. Like he's the one that at least this is my understanding from Scripture, is that he is 𝐦𝐤𝐬𝐽, that's referenced in Enoch, and he is the dragon. He is the one that deceives the whole world, as Revelation 17 talks about. And there's a unique turning point in history to where in the ancient times he was interacting with mankind a lot, and that stopped to where now he's more in the shadows, playing puppet master from behind the scenes. So, and the reason I say that is a whole bunch of research I've done, and I don't know how much of our videos you've watched, but have you seen any of our 42 series that we've been producing?
I've watched some. Yes.
Okay. Did you see the episode
Maybe
Babylon is Fallen, where I talk
Yes.
about?
I have even re-uploaded it on my channel.
Awesome. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah. And so in that episode, I talk about the 18th century BC Egyptian writing that talks about Ra, whom at one point interacted with mankind, but then mankind rebelled on him. And so then he created his home in the sky above the clouds to live away from mankind. And that's why he wanted to, he took a less hands-on approach and went more hands-off. And then he would try to control the nations with people underneath his authority, but not being actively involved and on the ground and talking with people and interacting anymore, because mankind eventually rebelled against him. And so to me, this makes perfect sense with the rise of philosophy from that time, from the 18th century BC leading up to even today, to where there's a ton of philosophy that men glorify, even amongst Christians. Christians glorify philosophy, and I think it's very
Yes.
it's not productive. I don't think it's productive because they're not studying the Bible with that same intent. They're studying philosophers and Christian philosophy. And so I think that it would make perfect sense that at some point he realized, if I interact with mankind too much, they see that I'm not a good God. He's not, I mean, the 1 Corinthians talks about there's many lords and many gods, but there's only one true God. It talks about the Father, right? And then his son, Jesus Christ. So the ancient world, they called their gods, but they weren't good gods. They were full of wickedness. They were inconsistent. They didn't try to benefit mankind. They abused mankind. And so this is where at some point he's smart enough to realize I've got to, if I interact too much, they're going to see that I'm not good. And so he takes a hands-off approach and plays more of a behind-the-scenes puppet master, to where he'll just rule through the kings of the earth. And that's my understanding.
Their main tool was fear, because nobody understood them and nobody could reach them, and they were worshipping the gods because of fear. They could destroy them. And as far as philosophy is concerned, I think people still believe that the humanities, this humanitarian wave that spread specifically after the French Revolution in Europe and then in America, but they put the man in the center, and our freedom in the center, and our prosperity in the center of life, basically. I think people still believe that this is it. That's it. That's the highest aspiration that we can have as humankind. Because I'm hearing it from alternative media still, that this is the goal.
Oh, the sense
Be
of humanism.
free, freedom. Yes, humanism.
Right.
They're trying to restore the French Revolution, bring the French Revolution back. My freedom means this is the highest goal. This is the highest virtue. Freedom to do whatever I want.
Right. Not freedom so that you serve your neighbor with love, but freedom to engage in your own.
Make my own choices.
Right.
Do my life the way I want to do my life. Nobody will tell me. Nobody will set rules. I will set my own rules. I will decide for my life. I will be the decider.
Right.
Yeah.
So it reminds me
It's still
of,
here.
it is still here. Absolutely. And why, and for the audience watching, what she's talking about, we actually see in the book of Tobit, the opposite of. So if the French Revolution pushed this idea, not the French Revolution specifically, but if the philosophical thought that spread through Europe and through America, to be honest, after the French Revolution, which is this idea of freedom based on a sense of humanism, which makes perfect sense with some of the stuff Benjamin Franklin talked about with his belief in deism, then you understand in the book of Tobit, the people were not free. The captives of Naphtali, Tobit being one of them, taken into Assyria and not allowed to serve those, even those who were dead, because it was against the law. The king had made it an unlawful act for Tobit to go bury the dead. And he breaks the king's edict to go out and bury the dead because it's a part of the Torah, is that you don't want your land to be defiled, and you go and you bury. And he's also doing it out of respect because the dead were those in captivity with him that were being oppressed by the Assyrians, his fellow Israelites. So that's an extreme example of an oppressive society that doesn't allow you to be free in order to do what's right. But humanism says we want to gain freedom from oppressors at all costs, not so that we can serve one another, but so that we can serve ourselves. So it's a very selfish philosophy of life. Yeah, it's very unchristlike philosophy for sure. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I see that as well, as there's like a dichotomy being set up across the world stage between agendas that are openly talked about, like Agenda 2030, where they want to control you, like it's worldwide communism. But then there's a pushback that's happening where they're going to be pushing to the forefront, well, we need our freedoms and our rights, not realizing that freedoms and rights are an imaginary thing that's granted by the will or the collective will of a people within that nation. I know, even though I know in our American documents, these says it's your inalienable God-given rights. That's a nice platitude. That's a nice thought, but nothing is actually an inalienable right without the power to enforce it. So unless the Father steps in with angelic hosts and enforces what you think was given to you as a God-given right, some other human king is going to come over and trample over that right, destroy you, take your family, take your land. And it's happened throughout all of history. So rights is an imaginary construct built into this idea that you are an autonomous person that can do whatever you want. But what's so unique about the Bible is that it's always, all the stories of the Bible, most of them are happening while people are under a sense of oppression, and they still find a way to go show love to others and serve others, even when there's an unrighteous ruler over them. And that is this wonderful promise of the kingdom come, is we're finally going to get, with Christ returning, a righteous ruler, so that we will be freed to go serve the nations. This is why the resurrected saints are put into the 𝐦𝐸𝐴ZEDEC priesthood with Christ, to go and serve the nations. Not so that you can just enjoy the kingdom come as you just do what you want all day and you can play cards and play golf and go to the salon. And like, it's not just to pamper yourself and do what you want all day, but it's literally the future, the millennial reign, the second advent of Christ is going to usher into the world. The resurrected saints will go out as an incredible priesthood that shares the truth with mankind that needs it, rebuilds the destroyed world, and does the dirty work of serving people. And this is why he asks us to practice it now before the resurrection, regardless if there's a righteous ruler or a good president or a bad president. So I think that's a great point you brought up, Maria. I really appreciate you bringing that out.
You said Agenda 2030, and you reminded me of the presentation Messiah 2030. Have you watched it?
I have.
Thoughts?
I think that it's. I would not recommend people that haven't studied the Bible for less than 5 years, I would not recommend they watch it. I think there's a lot of assumptions made in there, personally.
Yes, it's all assumptions.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of leaps in logic from one point to another that that happens very quickly, that could be very misleading. And I think that I think the person, whoever made it, I think they may have had a great heart, and clearly they want to, encourage people. But I think their presentation of it had a lot of missing places of explanation, and there's a lot of assumptions of predetermined conclusions on theology and eschatology that are inserted in there without explanation. So that's why we don't really promote it, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry to disappoint.
No, you didn't disappoint. Because I also thought that I don't know, a lot of the examples that and the verses that he was giving were, okay, it's a stretch. Like that's another stretch, and that's another stretch. Yeah. But a few, a couple were pretty solid, in my opinion.
Some of the, how do I say this? Sometimes presentation really matters. So you can say something that is wrong, but if you say it with an amazing presentation, people will think it's right for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay, because there is a disclaimer in the beginning that this is a theory and, could be wrong.
Yeah. I respect him for saying that at the beginning. That's true. So before we wrap up the conversation, I really appreciate taking the time to sit down with me and kind of just share with the folks a little bit about you and your journey you're on. I think it's a positive thing. I think a lot of people will be encouraged by this conversation personally. And is there anything that that basically you're still confused about in this journey as you come to Christ?
A lot of things.
Not that I'm going to have the perfect answer for you, but
not confused. I'm not confused anymore the way I was a month ago. But I'm still debating with myself a few things. I'm undecided, but it's okay. That's what I want to be right now. I don't want to say I have decided. It's too early to say I'm decided. On many areas, I'm still undecided. But when I'm saying I'm undecided, I mean, okay, I have an understanding, but I'm not going to tell people I know. I still don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. So as I told you before, why I like debates, I want to prove myself wrong. And only if something cannot be penetrated, then I would say, okay, I think I know now. Okay. So I like this process of learning. I've always liked learning, and learning the Word of God and the Word of our Father is the most satisfying study I've ever done, and I've done a lot of studying in my life. I'm blessed.
All right. Well, so none of the things that you're still in question about, you don't consider any of those topics to be a faith killer.
No.
Oh, that's good.
No, it's more philosophical.
Okay.
Let's say about how life operates, how things operate, things like that. No, as far as my faith goes, I can tell you it's pretty solid.
That's great.
Which is weird, because I found faith suddenly and strongly, if that's the right word to use.
That's perfectly fitting in my opinion. I mean, you see examples of that in the scriptures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the one that I think of often is his name Nahum for 2 Kings chapter 5. He was the Aramean commander of the armies that had leprosy, and he went to go see Elisha to get healed of his leprosy.
Yes.
And he dipped in the Jordan 7 times, and they come up clean of leprosy. And he asked Elijah or Elisha. He asked
Dirt.
next, huh?
some dirt to take with him.
He asked for dirt to take
Worship.
with him back home, and then he asked for permission because one of his duties and responsibilities was to go into the house of the foreign god that his king served and help his king kneel, because I guess this king was old or had some sort of disability. And so he said the king would lean on his arm when he kneeled to that foreign god, and he didn't want to be respecting the God of Israel by going into this foreign god's temple when his king made him do this. So what's unique about this is that his faith, now the prophet immediately said, it's okay, go. So basically said, yeah, I mean, Yahweh sees your heart, knows that this is your duty, your responsibility for this king. And Yahweh didn't ask him to rebel from his nation. He didn't ask him to defect from his nation and join the Israelites. He allowed that man to go back and said he wasn't going to be held guilty when he was assisting his king to go in and worship this false god. And so that's a powerful thing, because immediately this Nahum had faith. He wanted to take a memorial with the dirt back to his homeland as a reminder of that faith. And he had such reverence for the God of Israel at that point immediately that he knew, like, he was already going through his whole lifestyle, all the duties and responsibilities of his lifestyle, and wondering how he was going to repent, basically, and wondering if it was going to, interrupt his repentance by doing this duty of helping his king go into the house of a foreign god. And to me, that's a super strong faith, because this man immediately is going to go back to a pagan environment, back to an environment that doesn't worship the King of Israel, the God of Israel, and have to live the rest of his life now with reverence and respect for the God of Israel and work that out. So he's very much like a lot of us, where we don't live in Christian nations. We live in a nation all around us that's worshiping gods of materialism and gods of self. And they're not interested in doing the ways of Yahweh.
No.
And so for us, we become believers, and immediately we have to have strong faith immediately to then navigate the world around us, wanting to give honor to our King, but having to live around and interact with this world around us that doesn't want to honor our King. And so I just want to encourage you. I think you do have a strong faith, because a lot of people who are questioning things as you've questioned, they question themselves into unbelief, because they want
But
to know.
I came from unbelief.
I know, that's why it's amazing testimony. That's why I enjoy having you on the channel and people getting to hear your testimony, because the average person who, not the average person, we've seen people in the past, they have so many questions and they don't, I feel like you're doing this well. You're taking the time with it. You're not trying to get all the information overnight, but you acknowledge it's a process, and you're on the journey of learning more information over time. And you're not letting the questions that you don't understand become faith killers to you.
No, they're peripheral. This is peripheral learning. The important thing is, you believe that we were created from our Father. You believe there is a plan for us. You believe what's that plan? His Son, Yeshua, is that the fulfillment of that plan. You believe that he's going to come back for you. And you believe that the purpose on this earth is, to find him, to do his way, to have a relationship with him. That's where you're going to get all your satisfaction and your pleasure and your peace and your joy. That's where all these feelings come from building and securing the relationship with our Father and his Son. That's it. Now the rest are peripheral things, information, important information. I'm not saying it's not important, but that's the journey. The rest is the journey. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds very much like Lord of the Rings. You know what you got to do, and now it's just the journey.
Okay, Lord of the Rings. Yeah. I couldn't work it out.
Sorry, it took a minute. Sorry.
But that's all right. Before you let me go, the story that you just said about the
Naaman?
soldier with he took this bag with dirt, let's say. I don't know whether you agree with that, but I've heard that because Yahuwah has divided the earth and gave it to different spirits, different fallen angels, different gods, and each region had its own deity. Or that was the mindset back then, at least, of the people, that he asked for a piece of dirt because he realized that in this land, Yahuwah is the God, and I understand that he is a real God, and I want to worship this God, but I have to be on the land. They were binding the deities with the land, the area, and I found that very interesting. It just reminded me.
Yeah, it is a unique idea. I understand why they thought that, especially during the days of actual Israel being a nation.
I think even the Israelites thought that. That's why
Yes,
the
no.
pull to believe in other deities were so strong, I think.
Yeah, and even Solomon talks about while in captivity, if you face towards the temple and you go and pray and you face towards the east, when there's a standing temple in Jerusalem at the time. So yeah, I understand that the sense of where Yahweh placed the soles of his feet in an actual presence in the temple there while it was there. I can understand why they would have that feeling, that thought, for sure. I just know the end of the story, especially with that region being the place where the kingdom of God is going to sit down in the future forever. So I understand why it's called the Promised Land, because the fulfillment of the promise is that God's house tabernacles in that area.
Yes, well, he has chosen that spot.
He did. That's why he promised. Even back to Abraham, he promised that land. And if you read the book of Jubilees, it even talks about that was the land given to Shem. And Noah was excited that land was given to Shem because he knew it was the land of blessing and promise, and that specific geography. And so, yes, there's something very special about it. Absolutely. I'm just encouraged, though, that all the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, right? So we know that there's a special place where his house is going to sit down, but all the nations that live outside of that region in different lands are going to come to that land during the millennial reign to worship at Zion, to worship Yahweh through Christ being the high priest at Zion. And so, and then I can't remember if it's, I think it's Jubilees chapter 19. I can't remember the exact citation right now, but it talks about after the millennial reign, all the earth will become his. And so it's very, even though we already ascribe all of heaven and earth as his anyway, in a general sense, but I just think it's interesting that no matter where you are on the plane of the earth, his principles do follow you. And I'm speaking specifically about 2 Chronicles 14, where he talks about, if my people who are known call upon my name, return from their wicked ways, I will turn and heal them and heal their land.
Yeah.
And so you see that principle not only inside of the promised land, but you see that principle all across the earth, that if you do wicked behavior, the land will suffer as a result of it. But if you do good behavior, the land will be blessed as a result of it, because you become a good steward of it, because you're following the ways of righteousness. And so this is why we're made from the earth, and the earth is intimately tied to our behavior, because we were given dominion over the earth. So when we fail to do what's right and be proper stewards of righteousness, which means you're doing proper land husbandry at the same time, the earth will also revolt. The land doesn't like it. So I'm not, I'm not an environmentalist by any means. I'm not, going to start some sort of pact to raise money for environmental causes. It's much easier than that. All you have to do is follow the ways of the Creator, and the land will be blessed around you. And so it's very interesting that how he tied our existence and our behavior directly to the land. And so I can understand someone like Naaman, who lives in a land that's cursed because they're worshiping false gods, wanting to take blessed land from people that are doing it right back with him. I can definitely understand that. Anyway, but it's a great thought. It's a great thought.
Yeah.
Maria, is there anything you'd like to say before we end today?
No, I think I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for the invitation. It's always nice to talk to you. I would love to have another conversation with you. I can make another list with questions if you like.
Sure.
And if your audience also enjoying our conversations, I certainly do. You have a very unique, not only your understanding, you have a very unique way to present whatever you are talking about. It's easily understood, at least by me. So
that is my goal. That's my prayer, is that I can help people understand his word and make it easy.
All right.
So that's awesome. Yeah, just send me the a time that you're thinking of in the future. We can get your questions together, and I'll be glad to do my best to answer them.
All right.
Give you the best scriptural answer possible.
Okay. Perfect. Okay.
Be awesome.
We'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you so much, Maria.
Sean,
I appreciate
thank you also.
Right.
Shalom to everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. Thank you for being here. Hopefully that was an enjoyable conversation for you. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. If you haven't already, hit like. It's the easiest way to get this out into the algorithms on YouTube. Share it on your socials outside of YouTube. That also helps a lot. And hopefully, conversations like this, as you see someone on their faith journey, encountering questions, doubts, fears, excitements, different, triumphs that they've had along the way. And in a unique case like this, you're actually getting to see real-time progress. So that's why I think this is a fascinating study, if you will, on someone that's become a believer, come out of the new age, come out of unbelief. They're now a believer, and they're going through all these typical questions. Even though she's from a different culture, speaks a different language as her primary first language, you can see that the faith walk is the same for all of mankind. So hopefully this is a blessing to you. And I really appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you guys for all the new members. Looks like we got Hunter. Thanks for becoming a new member today. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, that's awesome. And as I've said before, if you've signed up for the Firmamentalist level membership, which is the equivalent of the Patreon family tier level membership, but if you've signed up on YouTube membership under the Firmamentalist level, please email me at kingdomincontext@gmail.com, and I'll be able to put you on the early access PDF list for the contextual study guide, and you'll get you'll get the books immediately to study and use in a PDF format. Okay. So be sure to do that if you haven't already. And you guys are awesome. Thank you all for being here. Have an awesome chat. Hopefully this was a blessing to you. See you next time.